Hello, my name is Mr. Curtis, and this here's Bruce. And we're puppets, and we're not finished yet. We gotta do that today. Okay, let's go, Bruce. Let's do it. Which way? This way? Okay, let's go this. Okay, here we go. Hi, everybody. My name is Mr. Curtis. I'm the real Mr. Curtis, and the real Bruce is right here. Bruce the paintbrush with his puppet head. And this is Puppets Part 3. Thank you, Bruce. And today we're going to be giving our puppets bodies and giving them some accessories and making them come alive, finishing them off. It's the final part, the exciting conclusion of puppets. Yes, very exciting. So let's just get to it. Hey, Bruce. Bruce is going to go to his puppet making area, and we'll check in with him later and see what his finished puppet looks like. Let's get started. Okay, Puppets Part 3. How exciting. We're going to finish our puppets today, and I've got a lot of materials here on my workbench. There is the puppet head, of course, which you will need, but not right away. This is going to happen at the end. We're going to glue this guy together. So we're going to say goodbye to Mr. Lizard here. See you later, Lizard. And he's going to go off to the side while we finish his body. We're going to need some fabric, which I've got here. So any kind of fabric that you have lying around is fine. If you've got an old t-shirt, that can work. Look around your house, see what you got that you can repurpose. I found this is an old cover for an ironing board. It's got a nice kind of silvery shine to it. I'm going to use that for a hat for my lizard. And so I'm going to put that aside for the time being. So I'm going to pull that out when I'm ready to work on that. I've got some yellow fabric here, which I found that I'm going to use for the body of my puppet. And I've got a pretty big piece. So you'll have to find a fairly large piece so that you can use that for the body. So I'm going to use that for the body of my character. And I also have a few other things here. A little bit of fake fur pieces. I'm going to use those in my costume. You don't have to use fake fur. Your character is going to be different than mine, probably. So, whatever your character needs, find those things that it needs. Maybe some buttons. Okay, I found a bunch of buttons. I don't know if my character needs buttons, but I found some here. If you've got some buttons lying around, you can use those. I'm going to put those aside too, and have them at the ready in case I decide to use them. And I've got a thread and so a needle and thread. So if you want, you can sew your costume together for your puppet. That's an option. I am going to, instead of sewing, I'm going to use my glue gun. Glue gun is a little bit faster, and also it'll hold, because the costume is going to be small, it's on a puppet, it'll work just as well as far as strength goes. It'll be just as good as sewing. But if you want to sew, if you know how to sew, go for it. Sewing is great, and I do that too sometimes. Also, if you want to sew but don't know how, you can look at Jessica Canard's video on sewing medicine bags, which is also on this YouTube channel. So check that out if you want to learn a little bit about sewing. And also, scissors are really important, and there may be some other materials that I'm going to bring out here and there, because this is really a mixed media project. Because we're using lots of different kinds of materials. In art media, the word media just means materials. So we're using lots of different materials to make one piece of art, our puppet. So I'm going to put this glue gun aside here, and I want to show you a very important thing that we're going to start with. This is a pattern, okay? So this pattern is what I'm basing my puppet costume on. And I've got the measurements drawn out here for you. So I would suggest using this pattern to make the body for your puppet as well, or at least using this as a basis, as a place to start. I want to show you something. Here's my puppet head. Now if you look at this and you imagine that this is a t-shirt for my puppet, it looks huge, doesn't it? It looks way too big. But keep in mind, when you're gluing or sewing, you always need a little bit of room for the seam, right? So that if you consider that you need room for the seam, it's actually going to be about half this width. The arms will be about half this width, and the body's going to be a little bit tighter as well. So think about that before you decide to, make your pattern a lot smaller. So I'm going to stay with this pattern because I want this lizard to have a sort of a robe. So I want it to be a bit on the large side anyway, so I'm going to keep it large. So I would suggest taking these measurements and making your own pattern. And these aren't exact, you don't have to go exactly with my measurements here, but pretty close. I've got 30 centimeters across the top here, 6 centimeters width for the arm, 20 centimeters for the length of the body, and 15 centimeters for the waist here. So you can copy this out, measure it out, and use a ruler and draw it out on a piece of cardboard. I've got a piece of cardboard here. Just regular paper will work as well, and you can use that as your pattern, as the thing that you can use to trace onto your fabric. And I've got my fabric here, and I've already traced one of my patterns here. I put my pattern on this piece of fabric, and I've got a nice square edge, so I just lined up my pattern with the edge here, so I didn't have to waste any material, or I don't have to waste too much material. And then I just drew my pattern around here, and now I can cut that out. But what we're doing is we're making kind of a t-shirt, so just one isn't going to be enough because that'll just be flat fabric, right? We can't turn that into the three-dimensional shape that we need for our puppet, so we need two of these. So we got to trace this out twice. Okay, so I'm going to trace this out again, and then I'm going to cut these out, and then you'll see what happens. Okay, I've got my two shapes here. 1, 2. Okay, now all I have to do is glue or sew them together. How do we do that? Well, we're going to make a fabric sandwich, and it's very important how you do that. So this part can get confusing if you've never made clothes before. But how this works is you've got one side's going to have your pattern. There's going to be one side that you want to be the outside of your costumes, of your clothes, and there's one side that's the inside. So you can see that these are different, right? This side is the inside. It's a little bit whiter, and the pattern doesn't show up as much. I want this to be on the outside of my clothes. So what we're going to do when we put it together, we have to make the pattern on the inside, okay? So we're putting the patterns together. The patterns have to be touching, all right? Like that. And that is because we're going to glue the edges, or sew the edges, attach the edges, and then I'm going to turn it inside out and turn the whole thing inside out. And that is going to not only hide my seams, but it's also going to give the body a little bit of shape as well. So let's put this together. So when you're sewing or gluing, when you're attaching, the way you want to do it is make sure you leave a little hole in the center of the middle here, because you need a spot for your puppet rod to go in, basically the neck of your puppet. And then you want to leave these areas open, right? Because that's where your puppet hands come out of. And you also want to leave the bottom open for the rod to come out. So basically, it's the same areas you would leave it open if you're making a t-shirt, right? Think of it that way. So I'm going to glue this edge, and all across the top, except leaving a little opening here for the hole for the puppet rod, and then all the way across the top there. Okay, let's get started. If you're using glue gun, the important thing is to remember that glue gun dries very quickly, and so don't do a whole line of glue all the way across and then go and stick it down, because by the time you get over here it's going to be dry. So just do a little at a time. And it's also smart to have something to poke down the fabric into the glue so you don't burn your fingers. Okay, something like, oh, it could be anything. Perhaps a end of a paintbrush like this can work. I can poke it down like that. Okay, so put that aside and let's get gluing. Okay, now our seams are glued and it's ready to be turned inside out. So let's do that. Okay, just like this. You're going to turn it inside out just like it was a regular shirt. And the arms are always the tricky part. Let's see if I can get them out. Where's our old paintbrush friend? Here we go. Paintbrush. Can poke out those sleeves. There we go. One. Let's start it here. There we go. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, now that's the body with the sleeves turned out. The arms are quite long. I'm not sure if I'm gonna keep them that long or not. Let's see how it looks with our head in here. Okay, still pretty large. You know, I like the width. I think a lot of width is okay, but I think the arms are going to be too long for this guy. So I'm going to chop down the arms a little bit and make them a bit smaller. But I like the wide. I like the wideness because a little head and a wide body it gives a little bit more the look of a robe anyway. So I'm going to cut these arms down a little bit. And let's do that. Maybe about half the width. Okay. Like that. Let's just measure to make sure we're doing about the same. There. There we go. That looks a little more reasonable, I think. Yeah. Okay, so if you have a small head like mine, you might want to consider making your pattern a little bit, or making your body a little bit smaller than the pattern that you have there. But the pattern that I have is a good one as a starting place. But now you can see what it looks like if you've made a head that's about the size of mine. If you have a larger head, then this pattern would be perfect size. Well, depending on the dimensions of your character, right? It all depends on what your character looks like, or how you want them to look. Okay, now is the fun part. We get to start attaching things. Oh, wait a second, I forgot. I'm gonna make a hat for him out of that silver fabric, except maybe I'll do that afterwards, because I think now is the time to start attaching him. Okay. So when you're gluing this part, it is best to use glue for this part. Hot glue works the best. You can try other things you have in your house. Even white glue might work. It just takes a while to dry. But the best thing is to put your glue on the head first. Okay. Right around the stick, because that's actually going to help hold the stick onto the head as well. Okay. Now be very careful, because you want this to line up. You don't want his head to be facing the wrong way. Go. Oop, don't glue it to your bench. That's okay, I'm going to hide that later. Make sure that you're working on your work surface is one that can get glue on it. Okay, there we go. Okay, now embellishments. Here it comes. Okay, I've got this nice fur here I'm going to use. I want to put this. Oh, that could be, oh, look at that. I could use that for hair. But you know what? I wanted this to be, he's gonna have a hat, so I want this to be a fringe around his neck here, like kind of a fringe on a fancy coat. Okay, I'm gonna glue that on, and then I'm gonna cut it off. That's what I'll do. Okay, looking pretty snazzy. Now we're going to attach the hands. hat is going to be last. Okay. So let's see. Hands. Let's get those attached. One on either side. On there. Oh, he's coming alive. So for the hands, just like with the head here, I'm going to glue along where the wrist would be, not on the fabric. It's better to glue, especially if you're using hot glue, to glue on the piece that's solid. Put it in there. Now you can see that the rod that we attached, it's on the edge of the wrist. This is not the arm. This is not the arm. This is the control rod. This is so that I can move his hand and make him do gestures and things like that. So the fabric is what makes his arm. Okay, now I'm going to glue this one on here. Okay, time for the hat. So, move aside there. All right, so the kind of hat that I want to make is a pointed hat, like that. So, the way to make a cone hat like that is you have to start with a circle, which I've already cut out of here. So I've cut a circle out, and it looks like that. It came out of here, and then I cut that circle exactly in half. So I folded the circle in half, so I knew where the half mark was. And then I cut that off, and then I have a half circle like this. Now, how does that turn into a cone? Well, what we do is we just gather these two sides together like that, and that becomes a cone. The reason why I did this out of paper first is that I wanted to see if it was going to fit onto my puppet's head. So let's see if it does. Pretty good. Not a bad fit. Okay, pretty good hat. So that's a pretty good fit. So how I got that circle is I used a piece of tape here to measure the circle. I think I used the inside shape, the inside size. So it's a good idea to try this out of paper first so you can get the right size for your puppet if you're making a cone hat like I am. So, but obviously I don't want a hat out of paper. I want a hat out of fabric. Now, where's my silver fabric? I'm going to get my silver fabric here, and I'm going to duplicate that process and make my circle like this. And I've got to find my pencil. Here it is. There we go. I'm close to I probably could be a little closer to the edge, but there's this seam here which I don't want. So it's always good to try to cut out your smaller pieces. If you have a large piece of fabric, use the edge of the fabric so that you're not wasting the material. Okay, I found some of this white string. I think that might work nice as a fringe, just to also separate it from his face. Aha! It is I, the Lizard Wizard. Yes, so he's almost done, but there's a couple little details yet to do. You notice that I added a wand here, or a wizard's staff, and basically all it is a stick I found in my yard, and then I glued a little fake pearl that I've had on the end there, so that made my wizard staff. And then I glued it into his hand. Now, the other thing that we have to do to just finish this guy off is we're going to color these arm rods black. Okay, that'll make them less noticeable and just looks a little more professional as a puppet. So the easiest way to do that, if you're using bamboo or wooden skewers, is we're just going to use our favorite, very inexpensive acrylic paint here, black, and I'm going to get a scrap piece of cardboard here, and I'm going to get a piece of paper towel, or a rag that you don't mind getting paint on is fine, so a paper towel. We're not using a brush for this. Basically what we're doing is a staining method, because it just works a lot faster than brushing, and you get a nice even coat this way. So I'm going to put a little bit of black paint on my cardboard here, and I'm going to take my paper towel and just dab that into the paint. So I got some black here. Now the tricky part is I don't want to get any paint on my puppet arm. Basically we're just going to rub this on. Alright, there we have it. You've made yourself a puppet. You've made a living thing out of paper and glue and fabric and sticks. Is it alive? Well, you're alive, and if you're making it come alive, then it's alive, right? It is. It can be. This is one of the very few art forms that it's performative. So not only are you creating something, but you're actually performing with it as well. So, where's my puppet? Where did he go? Well, I think I hear him coming. Let's see. Oh, yes, it's me, the Lizard Wizard. Yes, I've come here all the way from my swamp. I like to get out once in a while. Yes, I'm 700 years old, you know, and I've been around the swamp a long time. I do amazing feats of magic there. Yes, but what I'm mostly known for is my dance moves. Check it out. I'm 700 years old, you know. It's not easy. Well, I must be off. Bye-bye. Good to see you. Off he goes. Yes, so here he is, the Lizard Wizard. I'm pretty happy with how he turned out. There's a few things that I could do yet to make him even better. I think because he's just fabric in his arms and his body, that he looks rather flat sometimes. So adding a little bit of stuffing inside of him to give him the appearance of a body inside would make it look a little better. And also his skin is a little bit dry looking because of the paint that I used. So putting a bit of a varnish over top of that, I think would improve the way he looks. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the Lizard Wizard. And I hope you're happy with your puppet that you made as well. And speaking of people being happy with their puppets, I wonder how Mr. Bruce did finishing his puppet. Let's go check it out. Hello, Mini Bruce. Wow, Bruce, you look a little different. I think we can assume that Bruce had a good time building puppets. So until next time, keep thinking creatively and be kind to yourself.